Well, hello there, you and you and you, Uber Rubers and Tuberettes alike. Uh, this is Short Talk in the Trailer Park with an old guy, and I'm guessing you probably know who that is. I'm not going to elaborate. You figure it out in time, right? So I was going to make a little video today. Got home from work a little while ago. Wow, I went down after work to eat at Dick's Cafe. I'm sure you've never heard of it, and they had a really nice. Oh gosh, it was a green enchilada plate with pork. Hokey smokes! I got into that thing about uh half or two-thirds of the way, and I was sitting there thinking, can I even finish this? It was like this great big plate of food. So I thought to myself, better eat something because I don't think I ate hardly anything last night. I wasn't feeling like real happy about the shape of reality and stuff, and kind of put off by just stuff. The job I was doing was weird. Dealing with this lady, this customer, she was just uh, got some screws loose or something like that. And so at any rate, we did get we've been to the job 2 days now, so it's a reroute of a hot main, the not the main, but the well, it's the main feed to the river bath. And anyway, when we build down here on slab, well, you got a slab resting on the dirt. Well, one of those copper lines goes bad underneath there. Well, how are you going to fix it? You're going to find the bad line. You're going to intercept it. You're going to cut into the thing, cut into the manifold, and reroute the line somewhere. What, overhead maybe? Underground maybe? What? So this one went underground and about 100-foot trench. Marty and I went out and dug it yesterday, and well, I got home from that was maybe one of the reasons I wasn't feeling so hot. It was like a 100-foot trench, and I was telling Marty, I said, when I was your age, he's like 30, early 30s, I guess. Um, I said I could probably dig 60 foot or 70 foot of trench a day myself if I needed to, and that's just sticking with it. But by golly, I'm finding out you get old, and well, things start slowing down. And people have told me, hey Mike, you're getting older, and you should probably slow down. Well, now I see why they said that. So at any rate, we finally got the line in today and rerouted back to a main lavatory and yada yada yada. And it looks okay so far. So all we really got to do is just backfill it tomorrow, and I got to fix some sprinkler junk because when we were going through, we kind of destroyed a few sprinkler things along the way. And it's not a big deal. Real easy fix. We hope. I just wanted to chit chat with you guys some about news and schmooze and whatnot. I've developed this really probably not entirely wholesome new hobby. If you'd like to join me in it, doesn't cost anything. Cost, that's the key word. I got to thinking about this national debt thing, and I just Googled this the other day, and it turns out that the debt, the whatever you call it, sovereign debt for the United States currently is in excess of 34 trillion. That's with a T. Dollars that we owe to somebody, and that's just the power of interest at work. So if you get on the national debt clock and just watch it, it's not very entertaining, but these numbers, there's probably like 15 or 20 different little slots where they're measuring various items and subtopics, but the big number up top, 34 trillion. Well, it rolled over to 34, and they announced it, I think, the 2nd of January this year, which is what, 10 weeks ago? Something like that. Guess where it is right now? It's about 524 billion. 524 billion. So that means in 70 days or so, the thing's racked up almost a half, actually in excess of another $500 billion of debt that you and I owe somebody. That's a $500 billion of new debt. And so if you just sit down and watch the thing, I got all scientific and stuff and started counting, and I thought, well, hey, here's today's non-paying sponsor. Cheapskates won't send me any money. But it's pretty good beer. So I still did a plug. Maybe they're going to, have a change of mind and send me a big cash settlement in the future. Don't hold your breath, gringo. But if you just count, it's about 32. I counted 32 seconds. One time I counted 33 seconds. That's how long it takes to rack up an extra million in debt. So I looked at it Sunday, and it was a little earlier in the day than it is right now. That was about 4:30. Right now, it's closer to 6. So it isn't exactly a fair measurement to talk about it in 2-day increments, but a 2-day increment, and the thing has grown over $5 billion, $5 billion, and it's insane. I mean, it's just literally insane. So at this clickety-click rate here, it's gonna hit 35 trillion in probably about 65 days from now. 35 trillion, and then before the end of the year, probably another 120 days after that, it'll hit 36 trillion. This thing's just out of control. I mean, it really is. And meanwhile, you know, the United States government is sending who knows how much money off to foreign nations to help them go blow up people somebody doesn't like. And meanwhile, back in reality land, I've been watching looking at a couple of YouTube vids. Putin is making noises now because France is talking about sending 2,000 of their regular army troops into Odessa. That's in the Ukraine, in case you didn't know. And it's really their only main port city they have. It's on I think it's on the Black Sea. And 2,000 troops. The Russians already know that there are Polish troops and there are British troops already on the ground in the Ukraine, and Putin's starting to draw the line now, and he's saying, if you guys really want to play tag at World War III, let's rock on. But that's a bad idea. The United States is in no shape to fight a war. Internally, she's being torn apart. Fiscally, she is bankrupt, and worse than bankrupt. And the thing is that there is no leadership at the top. They're just throwing money and bombs and bullets at this problem and hoping somehow that by keeping the big business of making weapons and profitable weapons at that, by keeping that business rolling within the American economy is doing fine. You see, nuts. This is nuts. And so I got to thinking about it. You know, at some point or another, the United States government will have to announce to the world. Or else the world will announce to them, you ain't paying that money back, and that means that the U.S. dollar is now defunct. This is a way, basically, of torpedoing the old currency. So you've heard about this new BRICS thing. You've heard about these, golly, what are they called? Digital dollars. That's 4 letters. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And they tried to roll them out last year, and everybody in the United States said, nope, we don't want it. So they kind of shelved it. Well, all that's really doing is stalling the ball, because when the dollar does erupt into nonsense land, they're going to have a second currency, another currency. And it's going to have to be based in digital land, because you can't print money that fast. And so the dollar has been devalued beyond belief. Meanwhile, down on the Texas border, the U.S. Supreme Court all of a sudden kind of flip-flopped, and they've decided that, Texas can enforce immigration and get people arrested or even deported back to, I guess, Mexico or wherever they're going to send them to. In Florida now, they're beginning, whoever they are, the authorities in Florida are beginning to allow arrests by Florida authorities of, I guess, Haitians and whoever else is trying to come in to the Florida thing in terms of another, as they call it, immigration. This is not immigration, okay? There's immigration, and that's what you do is you go down and you talk to the officials, and you do it right, you do it legal. You come through the front door, not the back door. And well, anyway, I was laying around thinking about this stuff last night. It was just pretty darn depressing, and I just thought, man, I mean, what am I going to do about it? I'm 65 and I'm an old white guy. I mean, who cares what I think anyhow? And am I going to stop this runaway inflation? Am I going to stop? Oh, that's another item, by the way. Am I going to stop away this runaway debt clock thing? Am I going to stop runaway inflation? Am I going to stop an invasion by foreigners? Am I going to stop the insanity of sending billions and billions to a corrupt puppet regime somewhere? No, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. But I can make a video, and I can comment and let that you know that there's other people like you out there. That there's people who look at this thing and say, man, this is just nuts. This is not the America I remember. This is not the America I grew up with. This is a foreign land now. Yeah, they still speak English, kind of. And except everything they say is lies or exaggerations. I was watching, a couple of pieces about it. Donald Trump was saying something about car manufacturing and the border to the south and Chinese. And he was saying that the Chinese are building huge factories in Mexico. They're going to hire Mexicans to build cars, and then they're going to try to get U.S. car makers to ship their manufacturing down there. And Trump was saying, well, you can go and do that, but I'm going to put 100% tariff when I'm president, 100% tariff on every one of those vehicles, because the whole thing's as crooked as can be. And his whole thing was, he said, if this happens, if you guys go ahead and build these factories and these car manufacturers move down there, it will be a bloodbath. And what he was talking about was economically. It would be a death blow to the car makers of the United States. Well, of course, the insane left concluded that when he said the word bloodbath, that there is no such thing as context in the English language. And so, therefore, what he was going to do, you see, was he was going to run around, I guess, with a machete, chopping people up or something. I mean, they keep trying to pretend that DJT is somehow akin to Adolf Hitler. I just don't see the resemblance. Not really. The National Socialist movement was what we're looking at right now, and that's being sponsored by the left and by the neocon Rhino right. It's a fusion between huge international businesses, jillion-dollar outfits, and national governments in kind of a joined forces. So you see, in the Soviet Union in the old days, it was called Marxist-Leninism. It was communism. And it was an internationalist movement. International, meaning they wanted to sweep the world and have everybody become communists because it's such an incredibly good idea and works so awfully well. Yeah, works fine, except not. And in fact, there's never been a communist regime. There were, in the United States back in the 1700s, 1800s, like that, and probably up until recently, there have been like communes and stuff like that where people are going to try to live a communal communist life, and they never really last. Because as soon as people realize that, look, if I'm working, say, 8 to 5 every day here to make the commune go, and I'm knocking myself out, and meanwhile, Knucklehead over there across the street, he's just sitting around loafing and stuff, but he gets the same food, he gets the same shelter, he gets the same stuff that I do, and he ain't doing nothing. Why should I work? And so people become lazy. And there was this thing in Solzhenitsyn's work, he mentioned a word, it was a slang word called tufta. I believe that's how you said it, tufta. And tufta was the idea of trying to make it look like you're doing something all day. So the example he used was they were at a mine somewhere, and each of the inmate prisoners, I guess they give them some kind of digging tool, was responsible for bringing out X amount, whatever it was, let's call it, 3 wheelbarrows a day or 4 wheelbarrows a day of this stuff. And then they were going to, run it through their processing and make something out of it. Probably a metal, I'd have to smelt it down. Well, tufta was the idea that if you want 3 wheelbarrows, we'll call it 4 wheelbarrows a day, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I've got all day to do it. So I'm going to make this little pile of this stuff, and it's like an outer shell, and sort of like building up a mound, a pyramid. And so the thing's hollow on the inside. It's just the outside. So the guard comes by at the end of the day to inspect. He says, "Where's your digging? My stuff's right here beside me. See, there's my pile." "Okay, go on in." Well, when they bring in the other crew to move the stuff and bring it in, they find out it's just a shell. It's a hollow shell. So it's the act of looking busy, as if you were really contributing something when you're not. And that's really what communism breeds. In the communist China right now, they're having a heck of a time with motivation. They got a whole generation, young people, who just want no part of the CCP, and they've decided it isn't worth it for them to go out and work. Their parents are still working. They're living at home with their parents. They're doing fine. So they just sit around and rot. They just don't do anything. They're not contributing. And so what the Chinese did, you see how this works, in order to delay the information that they're having such unemployment problems, is they just quit counting those people. That's how you beef up employment rates. You just knock certain groups out of the counting. And so there's a lot of metrics in the CCP model where they've been lying about stuff for decades, and they're really not that good at it. But in other words, they telegraph a lot of what they're doing. You can kind of tell. Meanwhile, over there in North Korea, the little guy, whatever his name is, Kim Jong-un, Kim Il-jung-jun, something. Anyway, the guy who rules the place. He's making noises about we're going to start a war, we're going to invade South Korea and the United States, etc., etc. And now they have nukes, by the way. And so, I mean, things are just getting dicey. We're talking about potential World War III. We're talking about bankrupting the U.S. dollar, which means that the dollar is going to go into really the toilet for decades and decades, really all of my life and more. The U.S. dollar has been the international benchmark for trade, used by practically every country in the world. They use the dollar. That's going away real quick. And guess who's stepping in? BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now there's over 40 other nations, mostly in the southern hemisphere. A lot of them are African nations who are looking at this thing and thinking, hey, now wait a minute here. That's a good idea. Let's decouple from the U.S. dollar. And there's all kinds of new trade agreements coming up where they're trading national currencies, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really a remarkable thing. The pressure that's being put on the Ukraine leadership, if you want to call it that, the little petty dictator there, to continue the war and to strike Crimea and to make a real stand against this Russian intrusion. What Russian intrusion? Those areas of Crimea and the Donbass all voted to voluntarily rejoin with Russia and leave the Ukraine. The borders that the Russians have been maintaining now really for well over a year now. The only thing is there's a couple of little niggling details here and there where the two forces are now talking about a matter of a couple of miles forward or backward here and there, and other than that, the Russians haven't budged. The Russians aren't being strained by this, and they're not being, particularly hurt. But the U.S. is bankrupting itself. The West is eliminating all the sort of benchmarks of sanity, which used to attend NATO when I was a boy, because NATO was like SEATO. It was SEATO also, Southeast Asian something trade organization. I don't know what it's called. But the point is that there was organizations, and they were against a Soviet menace. The Soviets had repeatedly said it was still their goal after all those years, ever since the Russian Revolution, I believe was 1917. I think that's right. 1916 perhaps. Anyway, it was right in the middle of World War I. And so the Soviets, after the revolution took over, they just left the war. They just walked out. We're done fighting this war. And let the Allies and the Germans fight it out. See ya. And but ever since the early days of the Soviet Union, their ambition was global conquest. So these armament organizations, trade organizations, whatever they were, like NATO, were set up to have a shared common defense, so that an attack on any one of the members was considered an attack on all of them. Now, the Ukraine is not a member of NATO. What's NATO doing in there fighting their war? But Putin is saying essentially, hey, bring it on. If you guys want to bankrupt yourselves, And if you want to destroy your armies, I mean, Great Britain's only got like 60 or 70,000 men total under arms. The USA has something like 400,000 total under arms, and they can't recruit. Why? Because they got all their pride flags out, and they got all their politically correct gender pronoun garbage right out in front. And you want to talk to about a young man about are you willing to defend your land? Are you willing to defend your people? Are you willing to die for this nation if need be? No. That's the response they're getting from the Gen Z kids, and I don't blame them. What's to die for here? This place is run by crooks, criminals, and perverts, the psychopathic thieves. Why would I sacrifice my life for that? So it's sort of like when you had it, the old time thing. You'd say, well, I would give my life to defend this land, and now it's switched around. I saw a little meme like this today. It used to be that way. Now it's more like I would give my life to defend my family or my close community from this land and its so-called leadership. That's what's happening. We're looking at the brewing of a civil war here in the United States. So when you're laying around thinking about that kind of stuff, you're thinking, what are we going to do? Well, we're just going to keep marching forward, right? We're going to consider that God Almighty is smarter than we are, and He knew before the foundation of things exactly what was going to happen. This thing's been planned, and He isn't fooled by anything. So don't be afraid. The fear we need is the fear of the Lord. Ask yourself one thing. What are you actually afraid of? And honestly, if you look back at the CV-19 thing, what people, a lot of them were feared of was dying. That was the ultimate threat. That's what they were holding over people, that if you don't do X, Y, and Z, if you don't perform these steps, you could well die. Even though they already knew the mortality numbers were like 3 people in 1,000, something like that. And they already knew of the 1,000, which 3 would probably go, namely the old folks, the people with breathing problems, the people with, as they call it, pre-existing conditions. They knew those were the folks who were in trouble. Did they do anything to defend them? No. They just locked up everybody. And so we're moving more and more into things like that. And so when round 2 comes around, when you have another thing that starts with the vax and it ain't a scene at all, when you get into something coming in like that in the future, now it's got a whole different bundle of information going on. They're able to deliver stuff even at the molecular level through the actual code of the DNA. And can't possibly be a good idea. Probably going to be another big deal internationally, championed by the media and the authorities around the world, just like last time. Bunch of frauds. And so, as an American, as a free person, or maybe an ex-free person, as an American and as a free person, a free man, a free woman, you got to think, we're heading into some weird, ugly times. Think about the 1930s with the hangover of the beginning of the Great Depression in 29, and think about the wars in the early part of the 20th century, international huge wars, millions and millions of people died, nations overthrown, cities bombed to pieces. That's just small potatoes compared to what they're brewing up this time, I think. And it's going to boil out to, in the long run, that, certain ideas are not going to be, shall we say, welcomed very well. And so the thing that we're looking at right now is the growth of the state with regard to its power to censor creators carrying content they don't appreciate the, shall we say, language of. And what's going to happen out of that is, it's a little bit like, at least in my opinion, this is what will happen. Now, am I an expert? I don't think so. But in the old Soviet Union, the way that they set things up was that if you wanted to buy and sell, let's say, food, if you wanted to go buy food there was only one or two places or three places in town that sold the stuff. And when you got down there, there's a line that went around the block. Now, let's say this store is a bakery and it's selling bread. You know, you might stand in that line for hours trying to get some bread for your kiddos. And you get up to the thing finally, and it's like, sorry, we're out. What do you mean you're out? Come back next week. Next week? And so he went home without bread. The idea was is that the supply and demand, the law of supply and demand, was being overthrown and defeated by central planning, and it was starving their own people. The area of the Ukraine, as a matter of fact, was once known as the breadbasket of Europe. They used to grow wheat and, I don't know, sweet potatoes and rye and, you know, all kinds of good stuff in there. And I don't know that they're growing anything anymore because they killed all the farmers. They wiped out an entire generation. And our fearless Lindsey Graham, though, he did go over there and nag them and say, if you want your 60B, you better be, summoning up younger men into the military. We need warm bodies over here. And the Ukrainians have had an exception having to do with people going to college up, I think, to the age of 26 or 27, that they were not subject to the draft. Well, Lindsey Graham, that champion GOP right-wing conservative guy, stinking rhino, goes over there pimping for Biden to try to get the Ukrainians to draft their young people. He wants to kill them all. I guess, because they sure aren't going to take the Russians out, I can tell you that much. And the fancy weapons that the U.S. is selling them, guess what? Somebody's buying that. That'd be you and me. Hey, we're back to the national debt again, aren't we? And so we have this whole thing, and it looks a lot like, you know, I've spoken some about Tom Horn and his idea that the Rock 99942 Apophis is going to come crashing down in 13 April of 2029. I don't know whether it will or not, but I tend to believe Tom anytime more than I would never a straight answer. But it's like, what are we going to really do about a 67 million ton rock coming in at Mach 35 or whatever it is? We ain't going to do anything about it. We're going to sit here and get whacked. And it's part of the plan. Perhaps it might even be part of Scripture. Tom links it to the wormwood prophecy in the book of the Revelation. So it could well be. But in other words, if you ask yourself, what am I going to do to stop a 67 megaton rock coming in at 26,000 miles per hour, about Mach 35, something like that? What am I going to do about it? What do you mean, what am I going to do about it? I mean, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray that people would come to the Lord. I'm going to pray that His kingdom would expand in the midst of this. I'm going to pray that we would learn, His children would learn to walk in the peace He has established once and for all, because nobody's coming out of this place alive. I mean, Earth. Well, actually, at the end, there is a small cadre, we believe, of those who are standing alive and well on the planet when the King shows up, and they don't necessarily have to die physically. Paul speaks of a transformation. He speaks of a change, that in a twinkling of an eye, they would be transformed into the very, semblance and likeness of a Messiah in eternal bodies, bodies made new again. Huh? Really? Yes, really. And that's what we're looking at. That there might be some people who don't actually die, but the transformation is at least as big of a deal as dying is in any case. But what the premillennial folks want to do is they want to take that one doctrinal point there and turn it into this hootenanny about this mysterious disappearance around the world of people just disappearing, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. No, that's not what the Bible's teaching. And speaking of the Bible, I went down to church the other day, and I just want to encourage you that, by golly, if you can't find a church where you feel at home, join the club. Sometimes I come out of that place feeling so lonely. It's just like, why do I even bother coming down here sometimes? I don't know. I mean, you pick up the vibes off of people. You don't have to be a psychic to figure out that somebody really detests you. Look at their eyes. Look at the distance they keep. Look at the face. You don't have to be a mind reader. And it's just like, well, what did I do to you people? I don't understand. I never really went out of my way to be irritating, because if I'd gone out of my way to be irritating, you would know it. What you're seeing is just my ordinary run-of-the-mill irritatingness, which I inherited by virtue of being a human and raised the way I was and stuff. But in other words, we're all lonely, and we're all looking for something. And so I think what we're looking for when we look around the world, and it's really going to hell in a handbasket, is that we need other people to be able to rely on. We need other people to be able to look at and say, this is what I'm thinking. We need to be able to communicate. And that's what's shutting down. Communication is shutting down across the genders, as they call them, across the age span, across the racial divide. Anywhere that they can drive a wedge, they're driving a wedge, and they're trying to make you feel all alone. The war is for your mind. The war is for your heart. The war is for your loyalty. And they're trying to get you away from the old pattern and get you hooked up to the new one. And the new one, it's all imaginary. You can have any kind of world you want. It's probably going to be a garbage dump on fire. But no one will notice, and no one will care, because they'll all be with their VR glasses. They'll be walking around in some kind of paradise, looking at little fluorescent hummingbirds or something like that. They want to get people entirely, what do you call it, kind of stripped away and weaned off of the milk of reality. And they want to substitute a false reality for that. False reality, that's just another word for lies. And so the whole thing's built on lies. And we know who's the author of that crap is. And so when we insist as persons that, look, we really are concerned about the world, but frankly, I'm just a little guy. And there's a lot of us. What are we going to do? And I think the thing we should be doing is we should be praying for each other, praying for our leaders, yes, even for the poodle, even for Nancy, praying even for Klausy. He's not really one of our leaders, but in other words, praying that God would deliver them out of this idolatry, or that he would bring his justice to bear. In other words, don't let these people go running amok, ruining your world, Lord Jesus. Either bring them in and turn them to some decent human purpose, or let them go. I mean, somebody could die of old age around here pretty quick in shall we say, Pennsylvania Avenue, and who would be surprised? But the situation is it just breeds this hostility. It breeds walls. It breeds barriers. It breeds paranoia. It breeds a lot of junk, and that's really their big product line. That's what they're selling, but nobody wants it. Go figure. So I want to sell you a new product line. The new product line, it's in the 66. It's in the Bible book. And when you hear the word, when you see the word demonstrated in your life or in the life of a friend, remember that God is just and good and true. And he will uphold his own dominion. He will uphold his own righteousness and his own reputation. Thank you very much. But the short version is everybody, every human, every devil, every angel, every intelligent person in the universe will acknowledge verbally with their mouth his lordship one day. He's coming to judge. He's coming to war. He's coming to burn. Is there anything you can do about that? Because that's the real threat, friend. If the United States collapses, if Russia starts hurling nukes, if the Chinese decide to, capsize Taiwan, I don't know how you're going to do that. But there was a congressman who talked about capsizing an island years ago. He was a black guy, I believe, and it was just funny. He was talking about how all the heavy people got one side of the island and it tipped over. I think the guy was probably on drugs or something. But the thing I wanted to get with you was that don't you give up hope. Even if you are lonely, even if nobody does talk to you, the Father hears you. The Son, he intercedes for you. He pleads his own blood. He pleads his own sacrifice for sinners. Guess what? You qualify. There's a kind of a tradition in the Presbyterian ranks about, I contribute nothing to my salvation. It's like they're kind of proud of that part. Oh, you do contribute something. What? the failure. He's looking for sinners. He's looking for the weak. He's looking for the confused. He's looking for those who are dying. He's looking for those who are even dead. He's looking for the blind. He's looking for those who are not good enough. He's looking for the outcasts of society. The wealthy, the strong, the so-called righteous, they don't need help. They'll get their reward here and now. That's what the Master said. So wherever your treasure is, there is your heart. That's what the Master says. And or there will be, that's where your heart will be. And so if you're counting on a revival of the United States to the good old days of us patriotic stuff with Mom and apple pie and Chevrolet and stuff, it ain't going to happen. If you're, on the other hand, counting on money or banks, a lot of the banks are going down pretty quick. And by the way, I wanted to mention something to you that it just seems like a curious item to me, and I'd like your input if you'd care to comment. Do you ever remember in your life, I mean, I'm 65 now, the government authorities, whether they're state, county, or federal, dispatching the National Guard for an eclipse? What's that about? And there's a lot of interesting videos out there about this eclipse coming up. It's near Easter. It's near Passover. It's supposed to be a significant thing. And then the thing about Nineveh, there's 7 Ninevehs, and I think it's going to cross over 3 or 4 of them or something like that. And the others are pretty close to it. I mean, to the track that it's going to run through. I don't really know exactly what to make of those prophetic utterances because prophecy, as far as I can understand it, in our time is not necessarily a matter of here's what's going to happen next. I'm the gypsy fortune teller and I'm going to read the tea leaves, or I'm going to look in the crystal ball. Well, of course, prophets wouldn't use that now, would they? Otherwise, they wouldn't be a prophet. But the thing is that we think of predictive assertions as being essentially prophetic. Well, there is some of that in the Bible, but look at what the prophets were actually doing. They were locked up. Why were they locked up? Because they pissed off the king and the court. Why did they piss off the king and the court? Because they said, God is going to judge this land for your sin and the sin of your fathers and the sin of the people. Repent or your land will be overthrown. Now, that's what Jonah was sent to do, and there may have been an eclipse involved with that one too. But the point is that whether or not eclipses are essentially a prophetic item, I would have no doubt about it. There's signs in the sky, in the heavens, and the Lord placed these things there for us, and essentially as a witness for his own self to ratify his own righteous decisions. But when you look around, why would federal authorities, state authorities, local authorities be dispatching thousands of patrolmen and state police and National Guard along this route? And they say it's because of the traffic jam. Big traffic jam. Over a 1,500-mile route, or whatever it is, kind of swings through Texas and heads up toward New England, I think. Well, wait a minute. How many people are going to be on the road there? Nobody's at work that day? And so, I don't know, but there's something sketchy about this eclipse coming up, and I just don't, it just doesn't ring true to my ear to say that, yeah, we're going to have an eclipse, so naturally we're going to, put up sandbags and barbed wire and put out the war dogs and the young men with, AR-15s, as they call them, assault rifles. They think AR stands for assault rifle. Yep, nope. But when you want to have a friend and you want to just sit down and have a beer and rest and shoot the breeze and stuff, that's what friends are for. And so if you can't have a friend where you're at, I'll be your friend. I like people. As long as you don't get out of control. Like that woman today. I tell you what, I am not a violent man by and large. But I was on the verge of popping her in the mouth. I mean, she had a snarky attitude. And it was like, who taught you how to talk to people? You sound like little Miss Empress on her royal throne, speaking down to the plebes and the peasants. Ugh. Anyway, I felt she said at one point, well, if you can't do it, blah, 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 I'm just going to have to call someone else. And I was thinking, anytime you say, I'll pack my bags and go, gladly, and never come back. I don't care whether your house ever gets hot water. Bye. But when you need someone to talk to, you can always talk to the Lord. And so I did that last night. I was praying in bed and just, I did feel better later on in terms of being able to tell him my heart that I want to change things. I want to be make an improvement. I want to be part of the cure, not part of the disease. And with all this insanity and BS going on, it really looks like the death of an empire, doesn't it? At the very minimum, or the death of the West, civilized West. And I don't think the United States government exists anymore, not in the way that we thought of it. So don't look for an honest election in 2024. There certainly didn't happen in the last one. And when you say things like that, I guess it hurts some people's feelings because they have got a vested interest in trusting certain persons. As an example, if you want to insult Donald J. Trump, knock yourself out. I don't care. But he's still the best man, for the choice in this particular contest. Does that mean he'll be elected? No, of course not. It just means he's the best man. And so we need to learn to be patient with ourselves and patient with each other, I think, and to await patiently the Lord. He says, await him, wait him. And we learn patience by telling him our hearts and then entrusting those things to his care, asking for guidance. And so I asked for guidance at work today, and I believed, well, at first, well, I'm going to do it this way, and then I'm going to do it that way. No, I need to go this way. Then she opened up, blah, blah, blah. And so we had to tear it all apart and do it again. And it doesn't matter to me how it goes together or not. Because in the long run, the main thing is that she wanted hot water. She's got hot water. It looks now, according to her, right, although that's not what I was told to do by my boss. And he told her exactly what we were going to do, and she never understood it until I actually built it, and she couldn't understand why I did it that way, even though I told her 4 times why I did it that way. So, some people have got an ability to be a friend, and some just don't. So you don't have to be friends with everybody. You got to be friends with the Lord and be at peace in your conscience and know that you are not the one who is the unreasonable soul in the room. Enough preaching, I think. And so as we get ready to turn off the old camera here, I like Coors. It's pretty good beer. As we get ready to roll it up for the day, I just want to encourage you some. I want to be the one to say to you, don't you give up. Nah, never give up, because it's in the darkness. It's when things look like they have no proper solution. It's when the wheels have fallen off. That's when we actually are freed by our own, the way we're all screwed up as humans, to call out to the Lord for help. Because until then, we keep telling him, I'll take care of it. I'll fix it. I know what I'm doing. Do I? And so things have to get catastrophic before people actually take God seriously. And even then, half the time, they don't. There's information in the New Testament about how under judgment, under the pressure of judgment, all kinds of terrible things going on, kind of like a little bit like what we're talking about, except big. Cataclysms and catastrophes, supernatural, not just economic knuckleheadery and idiot warmongering. Supernatural judgments falling on the earth, and still the people curse God. They blame him for these things rather than looking at ourselves, our culture, our people, and ourselves. Me, Mike Labor. How have we lived? Have we walked along the royal road of faith and trust in Jesus? Well, some. We need to be kind of buckling down and realizing that, look, the only thing that's going to make sense in the future is that the king is coming. And when he comes, justice shall be done, and all of this evil will end abruptly in fury and fire. And that's the news. The good news is there's a way out of it. One way out of it. One way. The God who is offended, he himself steps into history in the person of the Son, and he pays the debt that you and I owe with his blood and with his broken body. That's the only thing that can save us in that hour. So if you're not fearing God, then you're fearing man, or you're fearing the devil, or you're fearing some force of nature, or you're fearing war or famine or pestilence or something. The king is the one to fear. Fear him, and he will treat you to an entirely new perspective. It's called being clean. The fear of God makes clean, says the proverbist. And so the proverbial thing to you is, you always hear about the love affair, the love, and the relationship with Jesus and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, that dude's invisible. What do you mean you got a relationship with an invisible guy, huh? What's going on here? And the reality is, we do relate to him, human to human, man to man, or woman to man, if you happen to be a woman, I suppose. But the world as it comes out to be really rotten to the core, even we humans cry out for justice and say, this can't go on. You can't keep treating the poor this way. You can't keep treating the righteous and the true this way. And it's only going to get worse. So, hunker down. It's going to be a wild ride. And he knows the end for you and me. He knows the destination, and the destination is good. To be in his arms, to be sitting like a little boy or a little girl on his lap, just looking up at your papa and saying, tell me a story. Let me tell you about the one that didn't get away. He's going to have some interesting stories to tell when we have time to gather around that big old campfire up above. And I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So peace be to you, and peace be upon your house. And don't think about crazy people and customers that haven't got brains. Think about new solutions. Think about a way to make your contribution count and make it matter to somebody in person. Start there. That's what I'd do. And who knows, I might even be right. You guys have a good day, and forget about the hocus pocus about the eclipse. If it is indeed a sign from on high, we'll have to have it interpreted now, won't we? What is the interpretation thereof? Well, if you want to read it as America is under judgment, I wholeheartedly agree. But I didn't need an eclipse to know that. I looked at YouTube for 14 minutes and it all came clear. The war is not over in your life until you surrender to him. And please do. It'll be for the better. I guarantee it. You have a good day.